I need to say something that is going to annoy a lot of Americans. And honestly, 2 years ago, it probably would have annoyed me too. The World Cup is exposing us. Not because Americans are stupid, not because Americans cannot understand football, and not because the rest of the world is automatically better at everything, but because the way America talks about football reveals something much bigger about how America sees the world. And I did not fully understand that until I moved to Britain and watched people treat football like it was not just a sport, but a shared language, a family history, a social calendar, a childhood memory, a political argument, a pub ritual, and occasionally, yes, a full emotional breakdown in public. In the US, we look at football or soccer, and we often try to squeeze it into an American sports box. We ask why there is not more scoring. We ask why the clock counts up. We ask why people care so much about a 0-0 draw. We ask why the crowd is singing for 90 minutes when nothing has happened, and the British person next to us is like, "Excuse me, everything has happened. You just do not know how to read it yet." That is what the World Cup is doing right now. It is forcing America to look at a sport we usually treat as optional, foreign, or something kids do before they discover football, with helmets, and realize that for most of the planet, this is the main event. This is not a little international tournament. This is the thing. Here is the truth. America is hosting this World Cup with Canada and Mexico, but America does not own the meaning of it, and I think that is the part that feels weird. Because America is very used to hosting the biggest show in the room. The Super Bowl is basically a national holiday. The halftime show becomes news. The commercials become news. People who do not even care about the teams still watch because the event is so American, so packaged, so loud, so perfectly built for television. But then the World Cup walks in and says, "Adorable." Now imagine that, but with the entire planet involved and with people caring because their grandparents cared and their local club mattered and their national shirt means something they cannot explain without suddenly getting emotional. FIFA says this 2026 tournament has 48 teams and 104 matches across 3 countries, Canada, Mexico, and the United States. 16 host cities. That is not a normal tournament. That is a continent-sized cultural collision. And the last Men's World Cup had around 5 billion people engaged with it in some form, with close to 1.5 billion watching the final. Meanwhile, even one of the biggest Super Bowls ever sits around the 125 to 128 million viewer range in the US. I am not saying that to insult the Super Bowl. I love a good dramatic American spectacle. But the scale difference is so massive that it almost breaks the American sports brain. Because in America, we are used to calling something world famous when it is famous in America and maybe a few other places. The World Cup is one of those moments where the word world is not marketing, it is literal. And that literal world part changes the emotional math. The World Cup only comes around every 4 years. That scarcity matters. America is very good at creating constant sports content. There is always another game, another draft, another debate show, another ranking, another trade rumor, another hot take about whether a player has enough legacy points. Football has that too at club level, but the World Cup is different. It disappears long enough for people to miss it. Children become teenagers between tournaments. Players age out. Countries wait. Generations remember where they were. That is why it feels less like a season and more like a global appointment nobody wants to miss. And the first thing America gets wrong is thinking football needs to become more American to succeed here. I see this all the time. People say, oh, if soccer wants to grow in the US, it needs more scoring, it needs more timeouts, it needs better TV breaks, it needs playoffs that feel like our playoffs, it needs mascots and graphics and a more obvious entertainment package. But football's power is partly that it refuses to behave like that. The match is 2 45-minute halves. That is literally in the laws of the game. It flows. It breathes. It does not stop every 12 seconds, so everyone can sell you truck insurance and spicy chicken. And I am American, so I can say this with love. We are so used to sports being interrupted that when a game just keeps going, we start panicking. We are like, wait, when do I refill the nachos? When does the analyst draw 8 arrows on the screen? When does someone explain what I just watched in branded slow motion? In Britain, people are not waiting for the sport to become an advertising platform. They are watching the pressure build. They are watching territory. They are watching body language. They are watching a midfielder take one extra touch, and suddenly the whole pub makes a noise like a gas leak. I was literally shocked by that. I used to think nothing happened unless someone scored. British football taught me that sometimes the thing that happens is the entire room realizing a mistake is coming 5 seconds before it arrives. And if you like this kind of America getting lovingly humbled by Britain in real time, make sure you are subscribed because this World Cup is clearly going to keep exposing me too. The second thing America gets wrong is thinking low scoring means boring. This one is personal because I used to think this. I grew up in a sports culture where a score can look like a phone number. Basketball can give you 100 points. American football can give you touchdowns, field goals, extra points, 2-point conversions, fantasy stats, and a graphic every 5 minutes telling you what someone did in the third quarter against left-handed opponents during humid weather. Then you watch football and it is 1-0 or 0-0, and the American brain goes, where is the rest of it? But after living in the UK, I finally understood that low scoring does not make the emotions smaller, it makes the moments heavier. A goal matters because it is rare. A missed chance hurts because it might have been the chance. One mistake can become a national trauma. One save can turn a goalkeeper into a saint. One offside flag can make an entire country collectively shout at a television, like the referee personally stole their inheritance. In American sports, there is often another possession, another drive, another inning, another quarter. In football, sometimes you wait 82 minutes for the door to open, and when it does, everyone loses their mind because the whole match has been a slow argument about whether that door even exists. That is why people cry. That is why people sing. That is why a goal in the World Cup does not feel like a score update. It feels like history suddenly changed direction. The third thing America gets wrong is the word soccer. And I know, this argument is exhausting. Americans say soccer, Brits say football, everyone makes the same jokes, and then someone online acts like the existence of the word soccer is proof that civilization has failed. But here is the funny bit. The word soccer is not some random American vandalism. It comes from association football. It was used in Britain. The British helped create the word, used it, exported it, and then later decided Americans sounded ridiculous for saying it. That is one of the most British plot twists I have ever encountered. It is like handing someone an umbrella and then judging them for not enjoying rain properly. The issue is not really the word. The issue is what the word reveals. In America, soccer is one sport among many. It has to fight for space against the NFL, NBA, MLB, college football, March Madness, hockey, NASCAR, combat sports, everything. In Britain, football is not one aisle in the sports supermarket. It is the building. That is also why Americans sometimes underestimate how early football gets installed into people's lives here. It is not just, oh, I chose a team because they were winning. For a lot of British people, the club is inherited before they fully understand what inheritance means. Your dad supports them. Your uncle hates their rival. Your granddad remembers a player from 1978 with suspicious emotional clarity. Then the national team comes along and suddenly all those club arguments get temporarily stuffed into one shirt, which is hilarious because everyone pretends unity has arrived while still judging the lineup like a family argument at Christmas. That changes everything. It changes how people talk. It changes what children inherit. It changes what a Saturday feels like. It changes how seriously people take something that to an American can look like just another game. And if you want the deeper, messier version of this conversation, I put the extra thoughts and more personal bits in the membership because football is one of those topics where the main video is never quite enough. The fourth thing America gets wrong is assuming fans are supposed to be entertained first. This is subtle, but it is huge. In the US, the fan experience is often built around comfort and spectacle. You buy the giant drink. You get the camera kiss cam. You get fireworks. You get timeout entertainment. You get music blasted between plays. You get a stadium experience that says, do not worry, there will never be silence long enough for you to have an original thought. British and European football culture can be entertaining, obviously, but it is not always there to entertain you like a customer. Sometimes it feels more like you are joining a congregation. The singing is not background noise. The chants are not just atmosphere. The crowd is participating in the match. They are judging it, pushing it, mocking it, begging it, and occasionally emotionally blackmailing it. And the songs are a whole education by themselves. In America, if a crowd chants, it is usually short, simple, and very organized. Defense. Let's go. Insert team name. Maybe a marching band, if we are in college football territory. British football chants can be funny, cruel, historical, local, weirdly musical, and somehow created by a group of people who all seem to know the words without anyone officially teaching them. That is not just noise, that is identity with a melody, and occasionally a legal risk. The first time I watched a serious football crowd in Britain, I realized American sports crowds often react to the product. Football crowds feel like they are part of the product. That is a completely different relationship, and this is where the World Cup becomes dangerous for American assumptions. Because suddenly, American stadiums are full of people from countries where football culture is not something they bought with a ticket that day. It is something they brought with them. They bring flags, songs, rituals, grudges, jokes, and memories. They bring entire histories. You cannot manufacture that with a halftime drone show. The fifth thing America gets wrong is thinking the World Cup is only about who has the best players. Obviously, talent matters. Of course it matters, but the World Cup is also about style, pressure, national psychology, history, geography, politics, immigration, identity, and sometimes whether 11 exhausted men can survive the weight of an entire country's expectations without turning into soup. In America, we often understand sports through franchises. A team can move cities, a brand can be rebuilt, a league can change rules to create parity, the draft can reward failure, salary caps can reshape the field. None of that is wrong, by the way. It is just a very American way of managing competition. World football feels more chaotic, more unfair, more ancient, and more emotionally unreasonable. There are clubs that feel like towns, rivalries that feel inherited, national teams that carry colonial history, immigration stories, regional pride, and old wounds. A World Cup match can look like sport on the surface and be 100 years of meaning underneath. That is why Americans sometimes misread the intensity. We think, why are they taking this so seriously? And the answer is because it is not just this. It is everything attached to this. The sixth thing America gets wrong is thinking passion means violence or irrationality. I hear this a lot from Americans who see football fans singing, crying, shouting, or celebrating in the streets, and they treat it like evidence that everyone has lost their minds. But America has college football fans painting themselves in freezing weather. America has people screaming at teenagers during high school games. America has grown adults whose entire emotional week depends on a quarterback's hamstring. So let us be humble. We do passion too. We just package it differently. The difference is that football passion is global and visible in a way Americans are not used to. During the World Cup, you can walk through a city and see 5 different countries living 5 different emotional realities at once. Someone is celebrating, someone is devastated, someone is pretending to be fine, someone is texting their dad, someone is explaining to their American friend why that draw was actually heroic. It is beautiful and completely unhinged. The seventh thing America gets wrong is thinking football is simple because the rules look simple. This was another one that got me. On the surface, football looks easy. Kick ball into goal. Do not use hands. Try not to be offside. Whatever that means today, done. But the simplicity is deceptive. The tactics are layered. The space matters. The pressing matters. The shape matters. A player can have a brilliant match without scoring, without assisting, and without doing anything that looks impressive to a casual viewer. That is very hard for the American highlight brain. American sports are amazing at producing measurable moments. Yards, points, rebounds, passing percentages, home runs, touchdowns. Football has numbers too, but so much of it is about controlling possibility, closing lanes, dragging defenders, creating overloads, knowing when not to force the pass. It is like watching chess, except everyone is exhausted, the board is wet, and one mistake can ruin your country. Once you start seeing that, the sport opens up. A 0-0 draw can be tense. A 1-0 win can feel like a masterpiece. A defensive performance can feel heroic instead of boring. But America often wants the sport to prove itself through constant visible payoff, and football says, no, learn patience. And patience is not just about waiting for goals, it is also about accepting ambiguity. Football has VAR now, yes, and everyone still argues. Americans often want sport to become completely clear. If we add enough technology, put a line on the screen, measure the toe, review the frame, solve the truth. Football keeps reminding you that even with cameras, humans are still furious. Was it a foul? Was the contact enough? Did he go down too easily? Was the referee consistent? The arguments are not a bug in the culture, they are part of the culture. Half the sport is the match, and the other half is everyone claiming they are the only sane person who watched it correctly. The eighth thing America gets wrong is assuming that because the US is hosting, America is about to become the main character. I know that sounds harsh, but we need to talk about this. The The World Cup being in North America is massive. It will change conversations. It will bring people into the sport. It will make Americans curious. It will create new fans. It may be one of the biggest football moments the US has ever experienced, but the World Cup does not become American just because some matches are played in American stadiums. That is the humbling part. For once, America is not the center of the story. America is the stage. And honestly, I think that could be good for us. Because when you live outside the US, you start noticing how often Americans unconsciously assume our version of things is the default. Our sports calendar, our terminology, our commercial rhythm, our idea of entertainment, our belief that if something is big, we must already understand it. Football challenges that. The World Cup says there is a global culture here that existed before you cared, and it will continue after your broadcast package ends. You are welcome to join, but you do not get to redesign the whole thing on day one. And that is not anti-American. I actually think it is exciting. Because the best part of discovering football as an American is realizing you do not have to make it American to enjoy it. You can let it be strange at first. You can let the chants confuse you. You can ask why everyone is angry about a throw-in. You can admit you do not understand why the referee added 7 minutes, but somehow also blew the whistle at the worst possible second. You can learn. And when you do, you start seeing why Britain talks about football like it is a weather system. It rolls through the week, it affects moods, it ruins dinners, it creates friendships. It gives people something to argue about that is both meaningless and deeply meaningful, which is honestly the most British thing imaginable. The World Cup is exposing America, yes, but not in a cruel way. It is exposing that we are not as globally fluent as we sometimes think. It is exposing that we confuse dominance with understanding. It is exposing that we often judge a sport before learning its language. And it is exposing that football's biggest power is not that it is easy to watch. It is that once you care, it is impossible to care a normal amount. And if this hit a nerve, hype this one up by commenting with the football thing. Americans misunderstand most, because I know the British side of the comments will have opinions, and honestly, I want to read them. Because here is where I have landed after living in Britain. America does not need to pretend it has always understood football. That would be embarrassing. We can just admit that the World Cup is bigger, older, messier, and more emotional than we realized. We can admit that the sport does not need constant scoring to be dramatic. We can admit that sometimes the rest of the world is not being extra. Sometimes we are just late to the conversation. And maybe that is the best way for America to experience this World Cup. Not as the country finally teaching football how to be entertaining, not as the host trying to turn it into a Super Bowl with different shoes, but as a student sitting in the loudest classroom on earth, realizing the lesson has been going on for generations. And for once, America might need to stop asking why the world loves football so much and start asking what the rest of the world has been seeing all along.